Hi, and welcome to part 2 of this PowerShell tutorial series with the Excel module. In the last video, we saw how to install the import Excel module and how to do a simple export and a simple import of Excel files. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to export data and include pivot charts and pivot tables. So that'll just make our reports look a little bit nicer, give some graphs to kind of visualize the data that we're exporting a little bit better. So let's go ahead and let's get started here. So I'm going to just create a new uh, file here, a new script file here in Visual Studio Code. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure that our module is imported. There we are. All right, and then we're gonna just create a export path variable, and I'm just gonna set this to the folder that I want my report or my Excel file to go into. So that's just gonna be on my desktop in a folder called Excel. All right, so that is all there. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to make a report of all of my Active Directory users, which are going to be specifically my employees that I want. And I just want to make a report. Probably I'm thinking on the organizational units that they're in, because as you know, if you've been following this channel for a while, um, my Active Directory structure that I have here and that we've made the script for, the organizational units are names of cities. So it'll give me kind of a better disbursement to see where my users are in the world. So I can allocate maybe my budget accordingly based on the different amount of users and different amount of cities. So one city should get more money for office resources compared to another one. So that would be a very good example of what this could be used for. So the first thing we're going to want to do is let's go ahead and let's just grab all of our employees. So because this video is, it's been a while since we've played with Active Directory for a while, so let's go ahead and let's get all of the employees. And in order to do that, what I'm actually going to do, because we actually have them in organizational units. Now we also have in our user objects, if I just open up Active Directory once again to show you guys, Um, in our users, we also have the office as the same name as the organizational unit. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to show you guys how to do it with the organizational unit in case you are using a different organizational unit other than the city that they live in. I'll show you how to do a few different ways here. So let's first grab all the OUs, so the organizational units. So let's do a get AD organizational unit. And we want to do a, just wait for the commands to load in here. All right, perfect. So let's do a filter, and we're going to grab star because we want all the organizational units. The server is going to be jacked because that is the domain. And then let's do that. I think should be good. So if we actually pull this here, we do get the distinguished name. So there is all of our OUs. So if I just run this script here, and let's just look at OUs dot distinguished name. So there we are. We have it. We have our domain controllers: Vancouver, Dubai, New York, and Toronto. Now, domain controllers is fine that it's there. It's not going to find any users, but you could definitely limit this to only your OUs that you would want. So we could do this where object name not like, and then we do domain controllers, and if we execute that, and then we look, now we only have simply are 4 OUs for cities. So that is perfectly good. So let's go ahead and let's just do a for each OU in OUs. Now we're going to have to grab all of our users and put that in a data set. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a array list here for all of our users. So let's create this all users, and we're going to create that as a system dot collections dot array list. We're going to set that to an empty array list. And then for each OU, we are then going to want to go ahead and grab all the users in that OU. So let's go ahead and do OU users equals get AD user. And then for this, we're going to go ahead and do a dash filter star, and dash search base is going to be OU dot distinguished name. And then we should have a server here, which I honestly don't believe that we need because we're specifying already the OU to search in, but that's all right. So now let's go ahead and let's do a for each user in OU users, and let's just go ahead and let's just write output, make sure that we're grabbing all of the data that we want. So let's just output the name of our users. So there we are, we're getting all of our users, which is perfect. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to create a user object here. And let's go ahead and let's create that as a new object, type name PS object. And actually, let me just do a properties star here. And let me just see what we actually have, because we might not even really. Okay, so the distinguished name is fine. All right, yeah, so definitely going to want to do it this way. So let's go ahead and let's create the user object. And then the first thing we're going to do is going to be an add member. Our input object is going to be the user object. We're going to give it a member type of note property. The name is going to be name. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put value. It's going to be user. And then I believe we should just name the user. I just want to get their full name here. I don't know if I actually store that. So what we could do is we could do the value, and we're going to store that in a string. So in here, we're going to do a $ wrap in parentheses, and then in here, we're going to do a user dot surname, and then we're going to do a comma, and then we're going to wrap another variable here and do user dot given name. Then we're going to do another add member. We're going to do input object. It's going to be the user object. Member type is going to be a note property. Name is going to be OU. And that value is, we are going to store the OU dot distinguished name. So that is going to store the OU that it's in, which is also in fact kind of storing the city that we're in. So that is going to be perfectly fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a all users dot add our user object. Now, as always with the add, it always gives us the index that it adds it at. So we're going to do an open and close square bracket and put void in front of it to eliminate that. So now if we do a write output all users and we just run this real quick here. So here is our data set that we get back. So we have quite a few users here in Vancouver. We have 2 in Vancouver, 4 in Dubai, 2 in New York, and 1 in Toronto. So let's go ahead and let's output this to our Excel file and create that pivot chart and pivot table. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pipe our all users to the export Excel, and then we're going to give it a path, and we're going to give it our export folder slash user ou.xlsx for the extension here. The worksheet name that we're going to create it as is going to be user ou. And then let's go ahead and do a include pivot table. And then in here, we are going to do a pivot rows. So we are going to pivot on the row, which is going to be called OU. So that is going to be our column name here that we want to pivot on. And then what we want to do is we are going to want to go ahead and do a pivot data. And let's do in here, we want to actually store this as a script block. So we're going to do an @ symbol, open, close, curly brackets. And then in here, we're going to do name. Oops. Well, let's do OU equals sum, I believe. And then let's do include pivot chart and pivot chart type. Let's make that a pie. So that should actually give us all the data that we want. So let's just run this here. So now we're going to have if I go in my users, in my user here, in desktop, in Excel, we do have our Excel sheet here. So let's just open it with LibreOffice just to see what we actually have. So as we can see, we have our OUs, we have our users, and then we have our user pivot table, which does not seem to have the proper values here. So let me just exit out of here, go back into the script here. It might be OU equals count, I believe. So let's just run this once again. And I think we might actually have to, yeah, we're gonna have to delete this whole file here. Let's just run this again. And then let's go ahead and let's import that into my LibreOffice. So here we have it. It is count and not sum. I was really debating when I said sum. So it is just OU equals count, and that will give us the count of each of the amount of users in each OU, which gives us we have a total of 9 users. We have 2 users in Vancouver, 1 user in Toronto, 2 users in New York, and 4 users in Dubai. Now in LibreOffice, as you can see, we don't actually see the pivot chart. This is something that I've noticed with LibreOffice, but let's actually close out of here. Let's not save it here, but let's actually just open up. I have a web browser open here with OneDrive. So let me just copy the file over to my OneDrive here. Because as long as you have a Outlook account, you do have a access to Excel online for free. So let's actually just go ahead and let's open up the Excel file on the online version of Excel. You can see that we still have all of our names, the OUs are there, and we go user pivot table. Just close out of that. So there you can see a visual representation. We can see that definitely, let's say these numbers were a little bit more complex and there was a bunch of different OUs because we have a bunch of offices everywhere. We could easily see that Dubai definitely represents almost half of our user base. So this is where a lot of the money should be spent, probably. And then Vancouver, and then New York, and then Toronto. So that is how you would really make some pivot charts, and you could do quite a bit on this. Now, let's say you wanted to actually see who was in the cities here. So we can actually do that as well. So let's just go ahead and let's keep that file here actually. And all we're going to do is we're going to copy this line and we're going to paste it under here. And we're going to call it user OU detailed for the worksheet name. And then the pivot rows, we are going to do a OU and we're going to do name. So we're going to include in the pivot rows OU and name. And then the pivot data, we are still going to do the OU equals count. The pivot chart will work. That should be pretty good. That should still all be okay. So let's just go ahead and let's run that again. And let's go and actually I need to reopen up this. Let's go into the files here. And let's just delete our old users OU. And let's just import the new one. So let's go see our new file here. So here we have all the users detailed. Now you'll see the data is replicated here, which is fine. And then we have the user OU detailed pivot table. So here we can see all of our names here. Now the pivot chart is broken at that point because you are putting this other data. So the pivot chart is actually going to be doing the data by name as well. So I would probably eliminate the pivot chart at that point. But that is completely up to you. It's really just a nice little breakdown at that point that you can give to people because it automatically puts these little plus and minuses that you can expand. So if you wanted to see all the users in New York City, you could actually see them, which is really, really nice. So it definitely comes in handy to see what's going on there. So that is pretty much it for creating pivot tables in Excel very, very easily, in pivot charts very easily. In the next video, I'm actually going to show you guys a different commandlet to actually open up a Excel package or an Excel spreadsheet. So it's going to be called the Open Excel package. And in there, we can actually manipulate single cells and also add pivot charts and pivot tables using data that already exists in files. So that could elevate a little bit of your functionality and you wouldn't have to add, like have 2 pages with the same data for 2 different pivot tables or pivot charts. You would simply be able to have this first sheet and just create other sheets with the different pivot charts based on that first one. So we will see that in the next video. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out, and I will see you guys on the next video.